That's better.
Recording, yeah. Let me move that component. David. Oh, David, David. I'll do anything. I recorded. Yeah, I started. What they do against. Yeah, there. This I record. How do we do it? Select the language participant you say. I just put it like, where was it? Yeah, I just like when the caption, I just open the caption setting.
What size? Caption look like this. There you go. Mhm.
Right. Then that's it.
Yeah, just make sure they did. Yeah. Ooh.
We're waiting for one more.
Well, usually again, when we talk with, our crew kind of meeting, I pose a question for them. We're kind of, yeah, share space a little bit. Not a, I know it's not my talk, but I feel like, I really like everyone's feedback and participation. To help me feel more comfortable, getting to know all of you a little bit. So feel free to all like make your way to the center. So right now I'm currently working on a project, with a nonprofit named Land that's, taking place in the state park. Right now it's kind of asking a lot of me, and so talking doesn't feel like my favorite thing at the moment. But, you know, I went through some of my own presentations and I was kind of like, I ran into this slide, which is, how do I stay in the center of the world making? And so that's the question I'm kind of posing to everyone today. I have a cricket ball that I brought back from tomorrow. And so I would love for you to share your name, your gender pronoun, and yeah, what keeps you at the center of the movement. So you all makers, you can see yourself makers, and what keeps you kind of active in the movement.
Hi, I'm Mr. Foundation. Pronouns. I'm a musician, and I think we're really would be, it's what helps me not be make sound and write words that just come out of me, and then accepting those for what they are, and then sculpting something out of it to make a cohesive song. So it's a process for me where I get to like experience intimacy with myself.
And a stretch. A little stretch off.
Thank you.
I don't even, what am I supposed to say?
You can say your name and like what could you make?
Luis, and I'm back to photography after 35 years. So I'm retired now, so I've got nothing that I do. And no, I've actually been taking photos. So I keep doing it. And I went from film to digital, which is I'm totally blind to it. So it's a good thing to do for me because it gives me busy. My mind will home. You know, 70 is a good deal.
You got a stretch for us?
A what?
A stretch?
A stretch?
Yeah.
Oh, a stretch. The phrase stuff.
You photograph. There you go.
My name is Eva. I think what keeps me creating is my vulnerability and my authenticity. I like to kind of just do what feels right, and it's definitely been a process over the past year. Kind of doing creative recovery. I was an artist as a child, and I loved it. That's all I wanted to do, and then I went through stop doing anything. So just kind of coming home to myself and finding that.
And your stress.
Candy Seneca. I love to come here because I feel safe. So that's why and my kids get something. Oh,
Hi, my name is Stacy. I go with she's her pronoun. And I
my body, I am kind of play a lot play, I guess, and so I'm hopefully comfortable. I should pull my shoulder. Yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Andres. Keeps me coming. There's no on button. It's the best way I can, just to say, the train just keeps moving, whether or not. I'm gonna stretch on my foot today. I'm gonna have to step this back.
So my name is Crystal, actually for now. What keeps me going is I'm currently oil. And so what keeps me going is like to try to put the images I see in my head. Which is like it's so beautiful and transformative. So that and my stress is
First year art student. We were going with, when I was growing up, dad's mom said, being an artist and don't make money. And so I'm old enough to make money in the time period now. You can make money at this time period. Oh,
Ashton, be heard. Actually, only 6 years my alma mater, so former student here. You know what? I'm just gonna be real with everyone. I am off center right now. You know, so I am from artist slump, but I haven't made art since the pandemic. So I just wanted to be kind of vocal at it and seeing as the other artists are very active in it. To make art. So as the one who is, I guess you can say, in the stereotype of what happens after you become an art student, I would say keep that fire going if you're gonna leave with it. For your brand, it's totally okay if it happens. And right now, being here, seeing Crystal with my homie since then, we went here together. I'm trying to find something. So yeah. And my stress is going to give me a nice little shoulder stress. Whoever kind of did on this side.
Hi there, I'm Darcy. I used to what keeps me centered, I guess, is trying to evoke some kind of feeling or experience in objects. And then stretch, I think the next. Let's see, I'm gonna do it all at once.
Hi everyone, this is Marceline. I like to for painting and working colors, a lot of colors and creativity because I think art can make your life inventive.
Have a stretch?
hey David, what keeps me going, is my connection with God and that I do, I feel like it's, to make it,
Tom? And this is what the questions are.
Well, it's your name, your pronouns if you want to share, and also kind of keep you at the center of the. You know, I was saying that I
The
was,
center of my name.
yeah.
Tom, and. Oh, my things, I do yoga and. Meditation and. Why I'm here, so when I was a kid, I was very interested. Like making things with my hands and then mouth. Here. Probably since the really.
Share objection.
Oh, okay, yeah. So the one, this is the one I recommend.
Amana, this is my first class, an art class, and I'm very happy there. I'm learning to work with my hands and, you know, doing that way. I'm not good at it, but 2 years I've been good. So anyway, that, and what else?
Objection if you'd like, Anna.
Yes.
It's the call and. It's just like, delighting. Going and just, yeah, I have my own practice that I'm really into. And that feels like enough. And my stretch, oh, it's like.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kim. I'm a chief school editor. Honestly, it's just curiosity. Literally anything and everything. Why the ceramic and why the if I thought my old brother calling you guys in my current. That really is. And my stretch is. Everything was completely said, I feel like I'm trying to figure out how to get on. So I'm really thinking
This one, finger, my senses, the need to create something and desire to be very visual. And stretch my shoulder, pops, you know, so I always have to do it and snap it in.
Oh,
My name is Christopher. When community center was about what I dress is how I found. I was always artistic, but never in the conceptual arts. I was a chef and I made like plates and menus and, you know, dishes, but to not actually like make the plates that things are made on and all that other stuff, playing and woodworking and creating things has really helped me like kind of guide me through my injury that I've been dealing with, and also like help me carry it with me. So I guess a stretch would be like a pelvic, little stretch your lower back. Yeah. Yeah.
My name's Trey. I'm in pronouns. I've also been pretty off-center, so thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I guess the thing that keeps me going today is just showing up every day and giving myself passion and yeah, people around being here. Let's do a hand stretch. Oh, does this count? Like, yeah. Okay, that's over hand. Yeah.
I like things with our hands.
Yeah. Cool. You ready over there? I really didn't bounce it.
My name is Pedro Garcia. I use the hand class, and what keeps me motivated is like my passion for building things. I've always been passionate, like assembling and building, and just like especially sculpture. I don't know what that class is, especially for my as well. I just love building and creating new things and just seeing the feedback I get from other people. And a stretch, which is a back stretch.
Hi, my name is Michelle. Say hi, Michelle. Hi, Michelle. You know, I officially feel like I've had a meeting. And that's what I wanted, is to find the humor in every moment. But yes, I am in program proudly 30 years, coming up on 30. Anybody ever needs to talk to me, by the way, I'm always open. The thing I like is finding the simplicity and the comedy and the most mundane and being in the right place at the right time. So I hope that you find me in your right place and your right time whenever you need me in your orbit. And if I'm not, hopefully I will come into your orbit when I need to be there. And once again, I'm going to do that. Stretches. We're going to start up and we're going to reach out to a flat back and go all into the floor. You just hang. Just let gravity do its thing. And when you're ready, make sure you bend your knees before you roll up and your head. Relax things up because you don't want to get dizzy. And yes, I'm a dance teacher as well. And let's go.
I just think yeah, I'm at this point now, I really have to turn life off, so Monday through Thursday, I really just work here. And then Holy Day starts on Friday. And what keeps me going is I just like to make things and like great problems for myself that I have to solve. That's exciting, so that's, yeah. And the stretch, how about, yeah, like, again, the hip. That's like that. And I have
Again for him, pronouns, and then we'll keep you focused on finding that. I was not able to see creativity, the manifestation of the thoughts on paper. That's anything about as artists, and this is how we can see myself being produced as possible. So seeing that is always the question. And then my stretch, stretch recently, I like to release that. And so take your arm on your shoulder and give yourself a nice little massage. Do some of that tension
I need more. I'm not a student here. I follow Maria's Instagram.
That's why we're open.
Dream. That hurts a lot, so I usually just do like.
Hi, everybody, my name is Tanya. She, her. So what keeps me centered, today is thinking about my daughter, thinking about my neighbor. And I think in general, to just thinking about like what we need about my younger generation, because I really feel, yeah, it's something really obviously. Oh, sorry, my stretch. My stretch is gonna be smiling until like your face looks weird.
Keep him. And I guess my purpose, like creating, I don't consider myself a creator. But, I don't know, I can't see myself in the future not doing art. So that's what. Oh, yeah.
Oh, right.
Guys, yeah, Alex and Michelle, my name is Kyle David, and I'm a she, formancer, she and her. And you can call me Diane. Some of you will see me all the time back in the fall semester. And actually, I transferred to Cal State Long Beach now, so I choose Cal State Long Beach. And my stretch here is basically I have my black on it, so I do the same thing. There's two ways. Rather than this far. Over, just meditate yourself. Close your eyes and meditate yourself for 10 minutes. That's what you call basically, yes. So I would be heading to Castic Long Beach by August. So I choose Castic Long Beach over Bakersfield. I love Bakersfield because Professor Andres is also my professor. Yeah, next to me.
I gave this a couple quiz. And my search is that one of the first thing.
Yeah.
So there's someone back here.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Hi, everyone. I'm Celia. She, her pronoun. What can we go to? My family. And I'm a photography. That's what I do. And that's something that always keeps me busy. And one stretch that I will do, Me. But not least. Hi, everyone. I'm Cal, like California with a K. I'm acting student at the art department, but I'm working part-time here. My class is free. And what keeps me center is that no fear. Not afraid to be publicly ridiculous. That's what my acting instructor always says. And for the stretching, we always do this, like rolling your body down, focus on each vertebra like this. And hanging there for at least 10 seconds, 5 seconds. And gradually rolling. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet all of you. Thank you very much. Thank you, my dear. Thank you for being our. last but not least. My name's Maria Meyer. They got your phone? Give your cheeks a little. So my objects are kind of more of a residue of this practice. You know, being collective, being community together. I make things, but really I do this. I play in spaces, I like to perform, and I like to just open up vulnerable spaces where our objects come through. You know? This is my garden. This was in 2020. A lot of currently I have some objects in the gallery next door with Tanya here, but also another amazing artist who's amazing is in the show as well. But a lot of the corn and ephemeral plant bodies that you see are from this. Oh my God, this one here one. Here's an image of me and my siblings and my mom and my aunt working on a show that happened last year, the solo exhibition. A lot of, I also like to do is create spaces for people to be in a creative capital space, right? My family is first generation, and offering art opportunities is a way to kind of engage them, open them up to new ways of thinking, new modes of creating, or feeling like they can redefine what work is in their life. So not all of them are paid, but my mom and my older brother were, and we built this. We built 4 sculptures together over the course of a month. So kind of what we started today was kind of like this. And for me, as a non-academic artist, a lot of the ways I've participated in my making is learning by doing, not always asking for permission. Nothing is done alone, and embodiment is. So we started with embodiment here. And when I say you're not asked for permission, I've not always had access to gallery spaces and to these places where I can put my art. A lot of that meant that I occupied the city, my city, LA, in certain ways. I've performed, I've moved to parks, I put objects in parks and in public spaces. That's the way I really like to engage. Now, okay, so I'm currently working on a parks project right now. In the LA Historic State Park in Chinatown. Here is my little Google Doc drawing. Right now, a lot of this year is kind of focused on. So this is the start of the project. It's focused on navigation, orientation within the city, orientation within myself. I've had a really nice year of making, and I'm finding myself in kind of this crux space of transitioning from art worker to art maker, and really trying to understand how I embody the questions, the problem solving, like I would say, and being willing to propose these questions into my practice. So right now, in this project in particular, I'm working in the city to call upon a collective of unhoused people to come and weave with me. And we're weaving a sculpture in the park that is a stargazing for the north stuff. So it's a bit of fun. Upstream object. It's just like a top of where I've been this year. Where my brain's been a little bit. So these are flyers that I've been making to actually participate or to put around the city for this project in particular. Trying to access people on the street. A lot of my background is coming from the DIY scene, from flyer culture. I wanted to create access for folks who might want to participate in creative work within the city, and it not only be designated for organization where I found these folks. So these are just kind of images. And a lot of my learning has come through my garden. When I talk about labor, I've been an art laborer in the film industry and in art production for a long time. During the pandemic was my first time actually having a break from this kind of 9 to 5 motion of working. The garden was actually a really strong way for me to access a different timeline, for me to understand a different mode of movement and time. It helped me understand a different pacing that I really needed. So this is my garden. And it was a very tedious garden to create. That's a whole concrete slab in the backyard. And from the first picture, it was just covered in weeds. I didn't have creative space at that time, so that's what I used was the starting. Started kind of slowly digging up these little cracks and planting corn that I found in, the grocery store that was in the early parts of the country. Images of the garden. This is an object that I made with my family from the first few pictures. This is of my mother in a whirlpool. This object called All in Time. A lot of the objects that I make, a lot of the figures, for me, feel like these cinematic beings, like they're all in the middle of the story. So it's a whirlpool with a figure inside, and then there's 2 other figures that are fishing her out. And in my mind, a lot of the figures that I create have a function, have a motion, even if they haven't quite found that motion yet. So this is, like the desire was for this to actually move around physically. And we put the motor in and we did the whole thing. But it didn't, we never got to that thing. But I actually really like that there's an intention there. And I feel very early in my practice in certain ways. So I like that I know that they will, they are coming. This was one of the first pieces I showed in a sort of gallery setting. It's a tree branch with these mounts I made. I like to use a lot of ephemeral material. I like to use material that will transform the place. This tree branch, and this object was actually shown in 2018, and this tree branch is actually a part of the sculpture that's currently used. So, when I was actually talking to the person holding space, we're talking about, would this tree fossilize? Like, would these oranges fall off during the course of the show? Like, what will happen? And, well, those are real oranges, that's the real tree branch. Okay, so this was, a lot of my background is also in sound. Like, I'm coming out of the DIY world in Los Angeles, with the music scene. So a lot of the time when I was first making objects or given space to make objects, I would think of them sonically. I like to think of the way an object sounds, feels, smells, tastes in a space. So these were clay balls that I rolled with family and friends over the course of less than a few weeks in a space called Club Pro, living downtown, over there. But it was on the 2nd story floor, and it was really resonant, hardwood floor. And this was the first time I actually used palms, and I didn't realize that until I saw the pictures years later. But so this was like an acoustic space. So people could walk through the space and the ball would move and I also really like, you know, being very early in my making, I didn't know exactly what objects looked like in my work. So, you know, the balls just kind of gave this meditative space of like each moment being able to process something and seeing something kind of gather and collect. You know, and I like that at a certain point, I didn't know what belonged to who, right? I didn't know who made what. And all of a sudden, there was this huge collection of things that was so resonant and so present in the space. And people who knew there to be engaged in it, people took them, you know, like, I enjoyed that part. I enjoyed watching how people perform the space with me. So this is an evolution. So a lot of my work, so the maps you saw from 2018 hanging in the orange tree, only one existed kind of further along the stone here, the gallery and the big show. And over time, I carved out the island. The face has been painted, weaving has been added. And for me, I was like thinking of a lot of these figurative works, I like to think of telling their own story and having the ability to have their own emotion. And maybe it's processing something I'm personally going through, or, you know, I don't know. But I like that at a certain point she got to open her, you know, and I like at a certain point that she got to just be displayed in this way that was a different kind of grandiose, you know. What is resource? So in a lot of getting to hold space, in classroom settings and in garden spaces, as a weaver, I've been invited a lot to go to community gardens and teach kids and things like that. The question that comes up for me or that I usually present in moments when I'm talking or when I'm with a gardening class is what is resource? And for me during the pandemic, as an art worker, as someone who didn't have a resource, I no longer had access to spaces to create. I no longer had access to school spaces or things like that. So I didn't have material. And kind of moving through the city, I didn't discover the poem kind of discovered me in a little bit of a way. But I was looking for a material to use, you know, and I've always liked using the discarded, I've always liked using things in the environment. But the poem was very present in my community. It's all over LA, it's omnipresent, it's somewhat invisible, you know. And so I began to start to harvest this within the movement around me. And that was a really interesting way to kind of be out in public during the pandemic. It was a very private and public kind of performance space for me. I would cut down a poem and either I'd go completely unrecognized or, you know, somebody would kind of like stop and gaze. And I always really enjoyed that kind of dialogue. And sometimes it wasn't a conversation. And I found actually that people who tend to be most intrigued, they're usually POC, they were usually older. And if they did speak to me, they were usually saying, hey, like, we used to do that. Hey, like, where I'm from, we do that. We cut palms, we make things out of that. I liked that exchange, you know, I really enjoyed that. And a lot of my weaving was self-taught. I learned through Googling things and going online. Weaving is one of the oldest tool-making things that we have as humans across the world. We use it as receptacles for our babies, and our food, and containers. Yeah. The harvest. Well, with some of these objects, like these square ones here, I've been very much thinking about architecture and building blocks and shapes, things like that Anna has. I like to also think of them as fashion objects, ephemeral fashion. And then also like, I'm still teaching myself as I go. That's what I really love about the material is that there's so much room to learn from each new mode of motion. So I started like weaving the body, you know, a part of
my work. Always been a part of my work. Very interested in the body of a performer. And early on, I started using different parts of my body and moving in space. So I leave my feet and I walk around. And just kind of, when I would take them off kind of hours later, I really liked that it was actually an impression of my foot more, like it was, yeah, it was kind of a stamp of that moment, that the texture of the ground that I was walking over, my yard. And yeah, and there was great little purses also. So, this is great. That's what I was talking about. Kind of, live in the face. And I take a kitchen knife, sort out some palms. I also really like the palm as a mapping tool with the face. They can be sort of all over the place. I usually feel like I have a sense of where a palm came from. This parking lot on 7th Street at this time. I was driving to Trader Joe's and this, I happened upon this type of palm. So I really enjoy that. And then when I bring all these palms together and I weave them into kind of a larger sculpture, it feels pretty interesting to kind of join the city. So again, I was talking a lot about like public performance and just kind of occupying space. As a person who's now given like gallery spaces and things like that, I made work that ended up living back where I found it. Like a lot of these objects I found on the street, I would personify them in my own way because it was of interest to me. Like I think we have a very discarded culture in Los Angeles, in our relationship to the unhoused, in our relationship to trash. I'm always interested in the way that we invisibilize these things or we come from the way. So again, a lot of what I do kind of trash collages in the world is kind of designed to acknowledge that something. The squares are coming, squares that were passed around coming from this archway that was kept on the museum. And over this past summer, I got to go to Palm Springs Museum for residency for a month with 4 other artists who were all actually young fabricators from my community. We're all brown artists who had all, been making welding together for the last, 5 or 6 years. We've all been working on other people's projects. We were all going kind of on our own terms. And this was an archway that I built as kind of an entry point to the space. Because a lot of our focus at that moment was getting to celebrate each other's projects. We found so much space and we kind of collectively built a lot of trust together with one another's work. Just through labor, and that's something I like to talk about a lot with my work is like this way in which when you embody and participate together and you build kind of an invisible. It allows you to kind of process things that maybe you wouldn't say out loud to someone you didn't know, sometimes. So cool. The corn has just been such an integral part of my work. It's also growing the corn in my yard space. Also helps me really like investigate the history that is a first gen person, as a export person who. My parents also came here fairly young and had severed relationships to their knowing, right? To their knowing about their culture, to their knowing about where we belong. Growing food really helped me kind of be investigated in a way that I didn't have maybe that access point within my own family system that I was questioning. Why don't we grow food? We come from agricultural backgrounds, why don't we have relationships to the land and music? Learning by doing. Like most of the things I started to make, I have no idea. This is just a big factor that has given me so much food over the last few years. But again, I just didn't know how to grow.
it was just kind of trial by fire. Who are future ancestors? So a lot of my figurative works I call future ancestors. They live for me somewhere between the surreal and the very real reality that my family has experienced. And for my older brother, and I figure my older brother, which I got the height perfectly. But he was one of the weavers on this solo show. It wasn't a solo show, it was a collective show, the family show. In the room right, behind that little starfish and up there. Is a room where my mom actually made a open piece that she showed in the college. And again, a lot of my work, although the objects to be like of the kind of collective practice, of the community practice, of the ability to open up a creative space with other people, and because others who don't tend to have these creative spaces available to them through their work, through their labor, but who are very creative beings, and maybe these moments are like an opportunity to see themselves. So these are the two sculptures we have here. Last day too. And this is Tina Madre, which is Mother. And this is the jig. Tina Madre is a three-headed being, pregnant with creation. And it is a multi-generational piece with a lot of his works. So the thing I really enjoy about placing some of these works in museum spaces and gallery spaces is that because of their ephemeral nature, because most of them are made out of plant bodies, the conversation of preservation, the conversation of contamination comes up really heavily in museum spaces. Because it's dirt and they're not clean, and I think these are actually agents to have conversations that we tend to not get to have in museum spaces or these kind of elevated institutions. I like what that gets to do. I like being disruptive and through my practice. Is it always collectible? Sure. No. No, but what I like to say about them, because a lot of them are actually imbued with seeds. So like a lot of the things coming out of the head, out of the body that create the body form are plant bodies that are actually seeds. So onion blossoms are surrounding the jade all over. I believe these works are multi-generational works. So although they may not take this form forever, when it corrodes and there's only a face left, the seed will be there. And you can have onions forever from this sculpture. He will forever grow. If he's cared for, if he's preserved. Yeah, with the three-headed Tina Madre piece, I was very much thinking about the Mayan death, birth, rebirth. Yeah, a lot of the conversations that were coming up during this time were, during the pandemic with me and my woman friends at that time was just this extension of sisterhood to our mother, right? Everyone's got the mother wounds, and we were all talking about it as women coming into our practices and into our agency. We were talking about this kind of sci-fi, the surreal, that you're, from your mother's side, you're actually within your grandmother's womb, right? So when your mother is conceived, all of her eggs are there. So you are actually being carried by your grandmother. And that's sci-fi. That's like supernatural, But that's also real. And so the intersections of the real and the real. And this is like her first iteration. And plants usually tend to always be present in my work. I'm always, trying to figure out how to grow. And talking about how I like things to have different narration, or I like these figures to continue to tell the story of the time. So to the left is this first iteration of a piece called Women's Worth, and it was during a backyard show in East LA. That was a group show with friends. I was thinking a lot about the Felix Gonzalez Torres work, of the diminishing body piece. Friends, a handful of friends and I had started visiting the Adelanto Detention Center. Carla,
I was there too.
you were there. But I met this woman, Lucero, who was a mother of 6. She was a queer femme, and she was a maker. And she made all of these amazing bracelets and things out of headphone wires. She made a lot of candy wrappers. I actually have a candy wrapper shoe that she made for me in an exchange. And we visited her a few times during that year. And a lot of like thinking about the diminishing body piece is about a lover who was dying of AIDS, and people can take the candy, but the body is always kind of diminished. I placed a piggy bank in space with that, with this piece, because we sent that money to Lucero, and it wasn't a ton, but it was something to put on the books, but it was exchange. In this taking, you can also, especially as brown artists who were really in dialogue about what was going on with ICE at that moment, it felt really important to kind of be in an exchange that goes beyond our conversation, beyond our object. How do we participate? And then, yeah, again, the pieces evolved, the faces will always evolve. And this ended up at Oxy Arts, which was a part of an installation or exhibition that came after an art activation called In Plain Sight, which was an art activation of skywriting above detention centers and points of interest all across the US, led by artist Shopper Storza and Castle. Yeah, this is the jig, a very early form. So I'm always trying to figure out so again, like objects like to move, like to change form. And usually that's just kind of based on what's needed. Certain parts diminish and we have to find a new building fix, right? That's how this object continues to change. This is far along. I want to make sure so I'm just going to kind of go through a few of these images. And yeah, if anyone has questions, we're kind of at the end of the run.
Question about the previous the last one. That one. Like it's how do you think that I'm putting
So I make molds. I make molds of my family members and friends. And it's secure. I use plastic shit, so it's really basic. It's really easy. It takes about 20 to 40 minutes, depending on how long they'll be willing to sit. And some really enjoy it, and then some, you know, and I like that exchange too. That feels very performative for us. It's the moment of intimacy. I'm touching their face. You know, they're sitting quietly for 20 to 40 minutes after. Like I said, some really enjoy it, and some I just like getting it. But yeah, some of these casts live with me for a long time. At first, I was making all the masks out of material that would disintegrate because I enjoyed that. I used it in performance. And then I started really like focusing on my family, and I liked it being kind of time capsule with them. So I started using concrete. And then I paint the concrete. And, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Came out with the flowers.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I have a question about the future ancestors. So kind of as you're making these beings essentially, when you make them based on like your brother or someone that you know, like you feel like, how would I say this? Like, do they be like, do you feel their presence in the work? Like, sorry, I'm not asking this. Do they become kind of an entity in their own? Even though it's based on not an entity of spirit.
Yeah, I think I think of these people as I build them. I also think about this kind of surreal world in which they're getting to exist. Like to bring my family into museum spaces, bring them into gallery spaces. These are very new for my family. These are very new places to exist in. So to have this object of my nephew, and he's going into Orange County Museum in his senior year, and never have really been to a museum space like that. And even, like I said, even my practice is coming out of the DIY, so participating in these spaces, and that, it feels very exciting to give them that space, but it also feels like it's breaking down what those spaces truly mean, and the importance and breaking down the hierarchy of what they need to mean to us. Like when I was installing one of these pieces, my teacher was at the Orange County Museum, like asleep on the floor reading manga, just really casual. And this girl that I could have maybe never imagined accessing these spaces. And that's kind of the future ancestry of her, right? Like, so she gets to live in a whole other reality that I feel like I'm just forging through, but it's already like broken this whole kind of glass ceiling for them. And they get to kind of live in this imagined space already. For me, it's the surreal, but for them, it's the very real.
I noticed, I have one comment. I noticed that on the big picture, it has, is it a real items?
Yes, I know. They are real things. Well, and a lot of the objects, like are collected ephemeral that I find at the park or on the walk, or like an earring that is just like, oh, it's so beautiful. It's so weird. It's so fun. So they're kind of assemblages of my own memory, my own time, and objects I find with people that maybe I'm building these, and with. So memory really ends up being a big part of finding these objects.
I have a question about the durational aspect of the material, and how much do you map out, I don't know, are you it has to get to this point, at this, the material has to get to this point for this showing, or is it more just here, this is where it is moment?
That's the thing to kind of always reconcile, because I was telling Andrea when, so before these two works came here, they were at Orange County Museum, and I had moved this sculpture maybe 3 or 4 times into local small galleries that my friends run, the Jade in particular, in the back of my truck, just tied down. And then, this moment of going to the Orange County Museum, and the Orange County Museum created the work. And when I got there, because it was so secure, it had completely fallen apart. The head had fallen off, and and I kind of just stood there in front of the box with, again, I bring new plant bodies. I bring their next generation plants, and I'll come and just be like, okay, well, what are we doing here? And the legs came from that, it didn't have a lower body, and then so many things had kind of fallen away that I sat at the Orange County Museum weaving my thighs for hours. The curators were really fine about it and fine with it, but those are also ways I kind of myself learning how to, I don't know, be a disruption in these places. And I got them on their first show ever to put dirt in the space, and as a laborer working artists like Rafa Esparza, so much of the conversation was around contamination of other works, and how dirt, how we would have to spray these things or do all these sort of chemical treatments, which I think are interesting ways to kind of push against these spaces and what this work can do. So yeah, I'm not
It's not even an issue. I mean, it's the dirt from this plant. material? What is the spectrum more?
Well, I mean, it's all preservation, it's not, it's like something that could go into another artist's piece and burrow and create an infestation. You know, and again, these are the languages also, like, I have 4 people that we've had to deal with in our migration, you know, contamination. You know, like, these are things that we have to contest with them. And so entering into these spaces, like, these become kind of little ways in which we can still kind of make those disruptions and have those conversations that easily get erased in our histories, you know? Because it's like, oh, you have access now.
How long does it take you to convince them to be okay with it?
I mean, at this moment, it feels like it's more flowy than ever. And I don't know if it's, you know, I recently watched a talk of a very well-known artist from 10 years ago that I watched her speak again, or like it was all on YouTube, but YouTube University, but then speaks 2 years ago. And the language that she's able to speak about her work now is so radically different than the way she was speaking 10 years ago. And like, I think we're all just kind of getting to push against these spaces and to reshape the language as we move through them, you know? And I think on both fronts, like the institutions want to reshape their language and we want to reshape the language, but that's a conversation, right? And that's why, like, again, I always start with the conversation and the room to be vulnerable, because that's the hardest part of doing any of this, right? Like the rest of it just kind of comes together, it makes itself.
Who do you deal with? Like if you go to a space and they're saying, you know, you gotta bring hazmat suits in order to see her.
No one said that so far. No one said that, but registrars are usually the ones. You know, but everybody has their job to do. It's just finding those kind of soft points where we can kind of make compromises together. And those compromises, I hope that when, you know, a younger generation are moving into those spaces, those are compromises that they won't even think of. Those are just things they'll have access to.
Did you ever ask them what the real conversation's about?
I mean,
Because it seems like, you know, kind of equal with racing sense, but you have to endure for how many years.
well, and that's why it's good to open up these conversations, right? In institutional spaces, it's really good to challenge these things that are so status quo or so like commonplace. Like it doesn't have to be that way, right? And it just kind of depends on who's gatekeeping, who is at the door. But I've come from the DIY scene, like see your black shirt. So, you know, like you just kind of sneak through the door. You just kind of make your way in.
How to help.
So how do you see your work evolving? Because I can see that you're putting a sense of like futurism within your work, but in a very biological form. Do you still see that you will be working with organic matter because of the easy accessibility and also the cultural lineage with it? Or do you see it like kind of going for marrying it with the more technical things? Because I see that the message between the biological of like it, like we were eventually going to not see here, but the seed that we're planting, and then also to like how we still exist or how folks exist, especially if you're using concrete for the mask and all that stuff. Do you feel like you're going to be incorporating more inorganic matter within this biological matter to create like a more futuristic conversation?
I did have a conversation with Kathy about that a few months ago. She's, you know, she's like a vet and she got all of it. And she like took me to the side and she was like, all right, I see a lot of paths here. I see a lot of paths here. But you're calling them future ancestors, where's the future? You know, and I was like, but like, I'm unsure, you know, and I'm speaking to my community, I'm speaking to my mentors, because I never put this in this way. I never found any resources in it. And I'm like, how does the work evolve? Like what conversations am I trying to have as a maker? What problems am I proposing to myself? And then what problems am I within my own practice, within my community? And again, like I said, I really do feel like the objects at times are residue of my personal process and my personal life and my communal life. So I'm curious, like, I'm at that first place too, and that's why I started with the landscape. Like, that's why I started with showing you guys what I'm doing now. There's so much of the work of now, like, really figuring ways to allow in a larger community, a community that I care about, a community that is visible in LA. And like, I wish I had more images of like performances that we did do. I was like, that's not all through, like, it was like parts of recycling that we put and paint and just like, this is for the workers of the street, you know? And like, those are like little totems and how I want to participate in the world. But now with resource, I'm like, and it's not, you know, it's not. Like with resource, how do I move? How do I decide? And that's what my figures are, I think, constantly trying to mirror back to them. How do I move?
I think this is really good that like the biological aspect is still like prevalent, and I think because you know the question that I initially asked and then you're explaining it, I think, and then with the person who also like mentioning this thing, I think it's still a good thing to incorporate the biological aspect with your, especially with the topic futurism, especially black like brown futurism and stuff like that. Isn't necessarily a conversation. It's still like a niche. We hear about like, you know, futurism, dystopia and everything. Like, you know, now it's a conversation with like black futurism, but then it's like, what is the conversation with indigenous futurism or brown futurism?
Well, it's like, I think of Butler heavily on, like, I think of Earthseed when I think about putting seed and that they could be preserved in the spaces that are so protected, and like through an institution and that seed that could just grow in my little backyard and the park one day and be like safe enough to like give onions to another generation, but like who's also really keeping the spaces, who have access to those institutional spaces, and also like I don't want my work to be so situated in this the ideal, because it's like all people are like, oh, like plant bodies and like you're working with plant material, whatever. Like also there's rebar and concrete because I'm of the urban sprawl. Like I'm a Long Beach kid, I'm a person of the city. And I'm always trying to figure out the ways in which those can respect and like we can live in some sort of, you know,
Comparing it.
right, right. And like when Patsy said that, I was just like, huh, how do I actually incorporate this material? How do I actually incorporate more of the city? Because like some of my early like figures in the street were literally just trash at the head on, you know, and that felt important to me. Like our city is covered in also this material, you know.
What about your work did it feel like in the past? Like, just for me, I think of it all future and you know, a lot of us climate change is that like I know for me, like I'm always thinking about sustainable materials and like I just go on and do things like plastic or resin and things like that because it's plastic. And I think that it's important to think about that. So,
I don't. No, I hear you. And like sometimes with like the kind of like fashion palm bags, I'll resin them. And you know, and people are doing like, oh, I kind of only want one if you can resin. And I've had to really like think about like what that means to use resin on a material that I know could last forever. You know, like there are baskets that have been found that are thousands. Like I'll friend won't buy it because it doesn't have like a plastic coating. And then it makes me really think about like our intimacy with plastic, you know, and like because it makes plastic like plasticizing objects is really precious and discardable at the same time. And we get those binaries really heavily. Whereas this material, sometimes people don't know how to touch it. And that's why you know, I'll always bring it and I'll hand it around and because the touching is a really important part of the work. You know, especially like in gallery spaces and institutional spaces, we're not allowed to touch, you know. But This material has tension, it's buoyant, it can move, you play with, it has sound, you know, and it can carry. I like presenting that to people, you know, I like teaching that to people. But also, we already all know it, because it's like an early human tool. And it is one of those things that it's like everyone knows. But thank you, guys. Thank you for having me.
Team Maria, thank you again. Good to have you. I know you're all hungry and thirsty, so please join us at the gallery for some like refreshments. Show, if you haven't had a chance to, where the artists are more than happy to hang out, spitball with you for a little bit. Thank you again.
Open.